Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Star Report. This is Jason here at New Dimensions Crystals and Reiki in downtown Brenham, Texas. It is May the 24th, a Wednesday. We do our reports Wednesday to Wednesday. And so let's jump right into the report. Everything's happening and nothing's happening all at once. It's the best. The energy continues to be intense because we are at transitional periods of Earth, the cosmos, the galaxy. And so if you're looking for symptoms to subside, you might be waiting a while. We usually start with the solar weather, and so let's get right into the solar weather. Currently, we should be receiving today, that is Wednesday the 24th, the energy or the plasma stream from the coronal hole, which just turned off of the Earth-facing sun, right? So it was facing us, so that would have made the connection, and then the plasma that comes with it usually hits a couple days later, which is today. And so that's usually the dark parts of the sun if you are looking at any of your solar weather satellites that goes through. And so coronal hole streams are usually denser or more pressure oriented than sparky. And so that's usually heaviness in the chest, sort of a sluggishness going on is going to be the energy that you're going to feel from that coronal hole. It is accompanied by some M-class solar flares, which are not producing CMEs. So CMEs is the stuff that comes off the sun when those erupt. If it's just a flash and nothing comes off, it's just a solar flare. And so we've had several of those in the M-class range, which is pretty big but not large. And so those would have been weird dreams, sleep interruptions. These combined energies do a couple of things. They increase storm weather on the planet, right? So if you're having rainstorms, they get worse. If you're having windstorms, they get worse. I think Guam is experiencing this really bad or big typhoon right now. And so those things increase in intensity when the solar weather is doing such things. And so that energy combined is really going to have you, I won't say scatterbrained, but you might be feeling a little bit disoriented. If you have any diagnoses of mania or depression, those might be exacerbated. If you have any kind of cardiac stuff, that will be sort of triggered a little bit too. And then technologically, we're also here at the end of Mercury Retrograde post-shadow. But technologically, a lot of times what happens is satellites have difficulty broadcasting or sometimes go down, which will slow down internet sometimes and sometimes have outages. A lot of these electrical fires that you sort of see in the news of infrastructure sort of burning, that's old infrastructure, but sometimes that's also involved in the solar weather, that old infrastructure can cause electrical fires and stuff like that. So pay attention to that. The uptick in the sun is sort of, I don't say it pauses, but it peaks at certain times. And so it's usually a 5.5 month cycle. And so we're moving up towards a peak, right? So we're not even there yet. The peak is coming this August. So we're in May, into May, June, July, August. So we're still on the upward tick of that. We just sort of had that mini in the middle cycle uptick. So pay attention to that, which brings us into the stars. What's happening in the astrology? It's still May, and May is still giving us the Taurinian stellium, right? So that is extra signs, the moon, and all these other signs. I think Uranus. You can see last week for all the signs I didn't write down, looking like which ones are still there. But nonetheless, it's still a stellium, which means that there's at least 4 signs in Taurus, which is right here at the back of the neck, right? Where alchemically, that's where the energy of the physical body sort of goes with the cosmos. And so that Taurinian stellium is really still helping you manifest your higher mind, the spiritual awakenings that we've been having during these retrogrades and during the eclipses, right? All that energy should still be sort of fresh in the mind and sort of still creating and downloading stuff. This Taurus stuff is how do you sort of set that into a direction, right? Taurus is the bull. And Taurus is an earth energy, right? So how do you manifest the heaven energy of Aries into physical reality? And so, and then once you choose a direction, so how do you keep that steady state of moving in that direction? And so this energy of the stellium is really continuing to choose what you became aware of during these retrogrades and these eclipses. You should really continue to focus on what does that mean and how do you develop that? And that's today, Wednesday, that's going on, or actually that's for the rest of the entire week. not just today. And so not only is that Taurinian stellium doing, but it's moving down, right? So we've moved signs. The sun has now moved from Taurus into Gemini. Gemini is the twin. And so the energy of Gemini is really the alchemical meeting, right? So here's Aries, here's Taurus. The alchemy of Gemini is really the nervous system or the spinal cord system, right? And so that idea of two nervous systems, the sympathetic and parasympathetic, so it is. Anyway, the two nervous systems are the idea of two people or two beings inside. And a lot of times that energy can also be associated with those of you who are aware of Kundalini or Kundalini yoga and the activity of the spiraling up of the energy up and around the spine, right? It has two usually sources, right? Sometimes those are red and blue, sometimes those are white and black, sometimes those are gray and black. But nonetheless, the idea of two channels that go around the spinal cord, moving the spinal fluid up and down the body, right? And so that idea of Gemini, that we've moved into Gemini, and that's going to be obviously the case for the rest of the week also, that we move into Gemini, and that's almost like, how are we producing spiritual food for the journey, right? So what are we producing with this? What kind of fuel are we giving ourselves? And so a lot of times that energy from Gemini is associated with the manna from heaven, right? So there is this energy or this substance which your body feeds off of, which is produced by the higher mind. And the more pure the higher mind, and also the more pure the body, the better that manna can create what you're asking it to. And so that's the energy of Gemini, which is going on right now. Some people sort of differentiate that also in the alchemy of, it's the perfected mind and the imperfected mind. So when you don't have your thoughts clear, or you're thinking one thing and hoping for another, right? Those are competing minds, right? That's, rather than going in a higher direction, it's causing confusion and a fall rather than a rising. So that's the energy that's going to be going all week. Pay attention to that. A lot of times you'll experience that as, tingling down the spine, right? Sometimes you'll sort of see that as a difficulty in sort of, I won't call it regulation, but you'll sort of feel that you're on pins and needles, and that there's something that you need to be working on, that it needs to change, right? And so that's the idea, that you're trying to choose the higher one over the lower one. And so you're working with this competing understanding of reality and of yourself. And so you really want to refocus on what was your ideal, what was the thing that was going on, how were you deciding to manifest on that, and then which channels are you going to use to do that? Which leads us into today, Wednesday. We have influencing us today is Mars. And so Mars, as the planet influencing today, is really that sort of drive, right? So a lot of times all of this stuff leaves us sort of tired, unmotivated, maybe unsure, right? This is that sort of I don't know, we'll use the word desire, but it's almost like that desire, right? So sometimes it takes a real big desire to act for yourself, right? Rather like, oh, it'd be really nice, but I don't have the energy, or it'd be really nice, but here's all the things that can happen. This Mars energy is really, that would be nice, and I have the energy to actually pursue that, whether that is a discernment of how to do that, right? That's energy too, you're putting towards, like, if you're making a really good plan, but it's also the energy to actually do it, because Mars is this sort of a strong militant energy, right? It's usually the god of war, right? So you can actually have the fortitude to get what you want, right? And not feel like it's going to possibly end in bankruptcy, end in broken relationships, but you can succeed, right? You could win. And so that's the energy that's sort of pushing us. And so with that energy of Gemini, right, you've got two pathways, right? You've got the sort of convoluted one, or you've got the sort of focused one, where your mind and your body are one, right? Or sort of working together, or your spirit and your consciousness are working together, or your body is, or your temple, as it were, the physical form is purified, while your thoughts are purified, right? And then those things can work together. And when you do that, right, it's like when everything's firing on all cylinders, you really can't lose. And so the energy of the cosmos is saying that that energy is with you right now if you can get the patterns out of the way that are not helping that. And so that leads us into Thursday, which is when we get the energy of the cosmos that helps us get rid of those patterns, right? And so Thursday, Venus and Uranus, Venus, planet of love, Uranus, sort of habits, undergirded stuff, deep-seated things, right? And so when these align, they're going to really help us release and do away with those habits that are in our way, right? So if you're trying to get your physical body better, but you can't stop smoking, or you can't stop drinking, or you can't eat right, that's a pattern, right? That's something that is hindering what you would actually like to have happen, right? And there can be all kinds of causes. This is not about a blame of a cause. This is like, how can you, with this Mars energy and this alignment of the cosmos, sort of overcome that, right? And so eat better, sleep better, stop doing all the things that are causing your body to not be the receptor of this manna from heaven the way it could be, right? So when you have a body that can receive or process the spiritual manna better, then you're going to be able to move these things. So that's the energy of Thursday, and Thursday would be the 25th of May. And so that energy is really going to help you sort of see the habits that have been keeping you back from it. It might even be just another habit. I have a bad habit of not calendaring stuff. I am very oriented by structure. I'm very I really don't like to create the structure. I like to manipulate the structure so that it flows better. So I am a fixer, a healer. Jason is a healer. I am a healer of situations, not a creator of perfection situations. And so that energy really is sort of pushing me to what is hindering me from my goals. Well, I haven't planned for perfection. I've just adjusted what's currently happening to its most perfect state for me, rather than creating a state which remains in a higher form for me to use best, right? So it's just an example, a personal example of sort of how that energy would be done, right? So calendar more, or really sort of focus on what I want and magnetize that to happen, right? So it doesn't have to be that I have to become more concrete and structury and physical in my planning. It means that I have to have a more clear and regularly broadcast to the cosmos understanding of the order that I would like to create, not an examination of the order that is and what is wrong with it. Does that make sense? Hope so. Moves us into Friday, which would be the 26th. Friday is probably a mundane day, but the moon, so the moon goes in an elliptical, right? So the moon will be the closest all month to Earth. So that lunar energy is always about creating the space, creating the awareness, right? It's the divine feminine energy is usually associated with silver rather than gold. And so that idea is also a spiritual energy, right? So the moon on Friday is going to help you manifest not the mental stage, but the spiritual stage to sort of do these sort of things. And that'll work for you that way. Saturday is a normal day. Sunday, I guess that'd be, I don't know what day that is. Sunday, it's the 22 Master Day, and it's also the beginning of the 22nd week of 2023, right? So this energy of mastery, of what did we do all this transition and upgrades for, that's really what's sort of going on here. And so when we sort of do that, we can sort of pay attention to what's going on that we can master the rest of the month. And then that sort of leads us into the rest of the week. By next Wednesday, when we do this report, we will be out of the post shadow of Mercury retrograde. It'll be over by next Wednesday, which I believe is the 31st. So the energy is working in our favor. We're into Gemini, which is really having us to choose the higher or the lower path, right? The more spiritual or ideal path, or the one that is more concrete and filled with probably a lot of old bad habits that we need to move out through the week. The energy is working for us, not against us. It's just sort of knowing what current are we swimming with, what ocean are we floating on, and then what the planet and the stars are aligning to help us do, and just sort of aligning ourselves for that. Speaking of aligning, Many of you know that here at the shop we do energetic medicine services. So we do Reiki, we do reconnective healing, we do other sorts of things. And so those can sort of help you if you're having difficulty spiritually aligning yourself. It doesn't have to necessarily be that we're removing anything bad or anything that happens to be assailing you, but when you're upgrading yourself like this, alignment is sometimes necessary, and that usually happens in our cleanse session. So if you're in the area and you want to book, you can book online at newdimensionscrystals.com and come into the shop and have one of those sessions. And then, of course, the easiest way, the most effective way, is everybody is breathing most of the time. And so the easiest way to shift is to do rhythmic breathing. And we are here at the shop do elemental rhythm breath work. And we offer one-on-one sessions. And for a limited time, those one-on-one sessions, you can bring a friend. And so that's going to be about an hour and a half of rhythmic breathing and meditation, or guided meditation, to sort of get you to that next space. And it's going to give you a technique or an idea that your breath and regulating that is going to be a way to help regulate these things. You can even help yourself to regulate, and the breath work actually treats the nervous system, right? So we're in Gemini, so this would be a perfect time to get into breath work. And you can also sign up for that at newdimensionscrystals.com. I believe that's the energy of the week. I believe that's all I have to say. I have tons more to say, but down the rabbit hole we are not going to go today. And so I will leave you all with that. Until next time, many blessings.